The day Mama Ifine ran out of the house with blood dripping from her face is a day I would never forget. I was only 12 years old then, peeking through our window while my mother joined the neighbors gathered outside to comfort her. Mama Ifine clutched her wrapper tightly around her body, sobbing uncontrollably. Her husband, Alhaji Musa, stood at the door shouting in Hausa, calling her Abalu, a woman who could only bet girls. Nobody said it out loud, but everyone knew it was his fault. This wasn't the first time Alhaji Musa had humiliated her. For years, she endured his cruelty, and it all started because of his obsession with having a male child. You see, Alhaji Musa was a man of 3 wives, and each of them carried the weight of his desperation for a son. His first wife, Mama Ifine, was an Igbo woman. She was a beauty when he married her, full of life and hope. But after their first child, a girl, Alhaji's attitude towards her changed. When the second child came, a girl too, his resentment grew stronger. By the time she gave birth to their third daughter, he had made up his mind that she was the problem. "I married you to give me a son," he told her one evening in front of everyone. "If you can't do that, then what use are you to me?" Mama Ifine tried to plead with him, to beg for his patience, but Alhaji wouldn't listen. Soon after, he took a second wife, Hadiza, a quiet and obedient Hausa woman from his hometown. Hadiza was gentle, always keeping her head down, and Alhaji believed she would succeed where Mama Ifine had failed. But when Hadiza's first child turned out to be a girl, his anger extended to her as well. He began ignoring her, barely giving her enough money to take care of herself and for the baby. She lived like a shadow in the house, watching from sidelines as Alhaji's frustrations continued to build. Then came Funke, his third wife, a Yoruba woman. Funke was bold and confident, with a sharp tongue that could silence even Alhaji's loudest insults. He was sure she would birth a son, but fate had other plans. Funke gave birth to 2 beautiful twin girls. Alhaji was furious. At that point, the household became unbearable. Alhaji turned into a bitter man, lashing out at anyone who had crossed his path. He treated all his 3 wives poorly, but his wrath fell hardest on Mama Ifine. She was the first wife, and to him, the biggest disappointment. He made her life a living hell. She was the one who cooked for the entire household, cleaned up after everyone, and took care of all the children, not just her own daughters, but those of the other wives too. Yet, she never complained. She would say, "God sees everything. One day, my shame will turn to glory." Years passed, and the house became a strange kind of prison. The wives barely spoke to each other, each caught in her own struggle. The daughters grew up watching their daughters' anger and their mother's quiet suffering. Then something unexpected happened. Mama Ifine became pregnant again. At first, Alhaji didn't even notice. He had written her off completely. But when her stomach began to show, the whispers in the compound started. People speculated whether she was finally going to give him a son. Alhaji, however, was indifferent. He barely acknowledged her. "She better not bring another girl into this house," he spat one evening, glaring at her as she prepared his meal. The pregnancy wasn't easy for Mama Ifine. She was older now, and the years of hardship had taken a toll on her body. But she carried on, praying silently for strength. When the time came, the entire compound held its breath. The baby was a boy. A boy? The news spread like wildfire. Neighbors poured into the house to celebrate, but Alhaji didn't even acknowledge anyone. Instead of rejoicing, he kept his distance, refusing to show any affections towards the child. His pride wouldn't allow him admit that the son he had prayed for came from the wife he had maltreated the most. But something shifted in the household. Mama Ifine, who had always been quiet and submissive, began to walk with her head high. She named her son Ifine, meaning nothing is impossible. You could see the pride in her eyes every time she held him. The other wives noticed the change too. Slowly, they began to soften towards her. Hadiza and Funke, who used to look down on her, started coming to her for advice. Their daughters adored her, treating her like a second mother. It was as if her resilience had earned her a new kind of respect. Alhaji, however, grew more bitter. He couldn't stand seeing Mama Ifine's newfound confidence. One evening, during an argument, he struck her. That was the day she ran out of the house, her face bleeding. The entire neighborhood erupted in outrage. Is this how you treat the woman who gave you a son? One of the men shouted at him as the crowd gathered outside. For the first time, Alhaji was forced to confront the reality of his actions. The neighbors refused to let him continue to abuse her anymore. They railed around Mama Ifine, helping her get back on her feet. From that day, she began to rebuild her life. She started a small business, selling foodstuffs, and used the money to send all the children, including Hadiza's and Funke's children, to school. She became the family's backbone. As for Alhaji, his bitterness consumed him as he grew old and lonely, abandoned by the very people he had once tried to control. Meanwhile, Ifine grew up into a young, strong, kind-hearted young man. Looking back now, it is clear that Alhaji's obsession with her son destroyed him. He had been given a family full of love, but his pride blinded him to it. We have come to the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and its powerful lesson, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you will never miss a new upload. What do you think about Alhaji's obsession? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below.